Hey everybody, it's Andrew Noyes here, live from the Facebook DC office. I'm here with Erin Egan, our Chief Privacy Officer for Policy. We're going to walk you through some of the proposed changes that we've proposed for our data use policy. But first, since it's Erin's first time in the hot seat,
Yep.
Why don't you tell our audience a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Great, thanks Andrew. Again, my name is Erin Egan. I'm the Chief Privacy Officer for Policy. We actually have two Chief Privacy Officers at Facebook. My counterpart, the Chief Privacy Officer for Product, is Michael Richter. And our collective goal is to ensure that you all understand as best as we can make it clear to you our data use practices, offer you controls over those practices, and respond to your feedback. And that's really what this is about today. We really want to hear from you all about our data use policy update. But I'm happy, Andrew, if it makes sense to start with the why we did this.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to remind our audience, if you do have a question for Erin, just click the Talk to Us button. It's a green button that you'll find right next to the video viewer, and we'll try to get to as many questions today as we can. So Erin, take it away.
So I'll start with the why, because we've received lots of questions as to why we're updating our policy, and then I'll talk a little bit about how you can learn more, and then the what is all about your questions, and that's really what we're going to devote most of the time. But let me just start with the why. And there are essentially three reasons why. The first is, as many of you may know, we are outside of the United States in Europe. We are located in Dublin, Ireland, and our regulator in Europe is the Office of the Irish Data Protection Commissioner. And last year, that office conducted an audit, an assessment really, of our data privacy practices, how we collect information, how we use it, to whom we disclose it, how we protect it, a really comprehensive assessment of our practices, which is public if you all wanted to search for it. But as part of that assessment, that process, the Irish Data Protection Commissioner asked that we clarify and expand upon some of our data privacy practices articulated in our data use policy. And they asked that we do this by the spring of this year. So that's a big driver of our changes, are being responsive to the Irish. Second key driver of our changes are just new products since we last updated our policy last year. Timeline, groups for schools. So you'll see sprinkled throughout the document just more information about new products and services that we're offering. And the third element, and a really important one, is just feedback from you, from our users. Over the past year, we've received lots of questions about how things work. And so what we've tried to do in this policy is, again, provide just more explanations. We have little tips, little light bulbs, where you can learn more about our practices. And again, trying to respond to feedback from our users. And just to hit this home, I mean, our goal here is to be really transparent with you about our practices. We see this data use policy as a guide to privacy on Facebook. And so we hope that you find that useful. We've had lots of good comments. And so again, the goal here is to respond to your comments, but I hope that you're finding the level of detail helpful.
And the changes are primarily designed to explain existing practices rather than assert new practices.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's an important point.
That is really important, and you can find out sort of, I want to let them know how they can find out more.
Absolutely.
I mean, we've tried to provide as much information as we can about the data use policy update. If you go to the site governance page, basically just search for site governance in the search bar on Facebook, you'll be taken to a page where if you click on the documents tab, you can find a red line, and I have these documents here. You can find a red line of our data use policy update, so you can see how it will change based on, basically, this is sort of all the red lines of the changes we're proposing. And we also have here an explanation, a section-by-section analysis of all the changes that our users can look at. So this is something that's another great tool. And again, we're seeking comments from users, and so that's also part of the process, and you can find out more on the site governance page. So that's sort of the why and the how, and then I hope that we have some great questions and happy to answer them.
I see some really good questions coming in. I think one other thing we wanted to point out was the new Terms and Policy Hub, right?
Yes, that's exactly right, and I apologize. So we actually have a slide, I think, of the Policies Hub. You can access this Policy Hub by clicking on Terms on the bottom of any page on Facebook. And it's a terrific resource. You can see our data use policy update there. You can see our statement of rights and responsibility. It's a place where you can access all of the relevant documents on Facebook. And so that's a terrific resource. The other resource I wanted to highlight, and I'm hoping folks can put a slide up, is another document that I have here, is a document all about cookies, pixels, and similar technologies. We've received lots of feedback from users as well as policymakers and regulators both here and abroad around cookies. What are they? Why do you use them? How do you use them? And so we've now put together, which I think is just a terrific document that really describes what cookies are. I mean, essentially, cookies are designed to enable a website to remember things. So we use cookies, for example, to remember when you just logged in. So if you log in from somewhere else at a really close proximity, we might do something and ask you to re-authenticate yourself to make sure it is really you. And we use cookies to know when you're logged in, so we can personalize things to you. So this Cookies Hub is a great resource, and it's another element of our transparency, if you will, that we're rolling out as part of this data use policy update. So thank you for reminding me about these great documents.
Two great resources.
Yeah, exactly.
So let's go ahead and jump right into questions.
Okay.
We have a really great question that came into us from Ellis in Colorado. And Ellis says, I recently switched over to the new profile format, which is known as Timeline. I'm not sure about the purpose of the activity log. Can you explain?
Sure. Okay. The activity log is a terrific resource. And so folks who may not know even where it is, if you go to your timeline, and hopefully folks have now migrated to the timeline, the new timeline. If you go to your timeline, there's a little button there that says activity log. It's accessible to only you, which is key. And if you click on that, you can see basically everything you've done on Facebook. And you can see the audience with whom you've shared it. You'll see these little icons. There's a world, that means it's public. You can customize it. There's friends, a little icon. And you can also set things to only me. I do that a lot when I want to record things that I'm doing with my kids and I don't want everyone to see it. I'll set it to only me. So Timeline is a place where you can, activity log, is a place where you can see all of that. You can change the audience retroactively. So one of the beauties of Timeline is you can more easily access things you did from a few years ago. You can then go to your activity log. You can see with whom you shared things. You can change the audience, or you can delete things you've done. So it's really intended to be a terrific tool, and we hope that you all take advantage of it. So part of the data use policy update is just describing what that is.
Excellent, excellent. And I think another point is that all of the stories in the activity log are organized by date. So
That's
it's
right.
really easy to see, to scroll through.
Yeah.
So we have another question from Rita in Ohio. And Rita says, you've proposed a change regarding mobile syncing. What is that change and what does it mean for me?
Okay.
What does it mean for users and their mobile phones?
Great question. So this is just another element of where we're trying to be really clear with users about how things work. So mobile syncing. You can share your contact information on Facebook, just like you can share your contact information with lots of services. And those services enable you to basically sync those contacts. It's a fancy word for basically copying those contacts down to your mobile device. So that if I wanted to reach you, I wouldn't have to log into Facebook and find your number. I could just have synced that information to my mobile device, and then I could just go on here and I could find your number. Mm-hmm. So the purpose of what we're doing with our update is we want to let people know that if you share contact information with someone, they can sync it to their device, and at that point, we don't have control over what happens to it. That friend of yours or someone else could basically use an app on that device if the device allows it, which could access your contact information. So again, it's just one of these warnings, these tips. Mm-hmm. Just be cognizant before you share your contact information because it can be synced.
Excellent. Good advice. Another question from Jeanette in California. And Jeanette says, you've updated your policy around account deletion. What are those changes? There were quite a few red lines there.
Okay, great. And here again, no changes. Just want to let her know. So this is really about updating to be clear. So you can delete your account on Facebook. You can permanently delete your account on Facebook. You can delete specific posts on Facebook. But what we wanted to do here with this change is to let people know that if you delete your account, there's going to be some things that still may be on Facebook writ large. So for example, if I send you a message, I can delete my copy of that message, but that message is still going to exist in your space in your account. And so it's akin to if I were to write you a letter, I could keep a copy, but I send that letter to you, you're going to have that copy. So we wanted people to know, again, in our real goal here and effort here is to be real transparent and clear, that when you delete an account, there's still going to be some things, like if you share a message, that'll still be there. So that's the purpose of that change, really.
Excellent.
And that update. I should be clear. That
right.
update. Yes.
Absolutely. I want to remind folks that they have questions. Go ahead and click the Talk to Us button. It's the green button right next to your video viewer, and we will try to get to as many questions for Erin as possible. Next question comes in from Josh in Virginia, and Josh says, you talk about the audience of people's posts. What do you mean by audience? You referenced audience a few times.
Yeah, and there's a couple, I want to talk about audience a little bit. That's a great question. And there's also an update around audience here that we're trying to be really, really crisp on. So audience is a primary way in which you control what happens on Facebook. And we try to make it really easy for you by enabling users to select on basically a per post basis the audience with whom they want to share something. So I may want to share something with you, and I may say something when I know it's just you. Right? But I may say something different if I know it's a wider audience or a wider group. And so we know that, and we're really trying to mirror the offline, right, the real world experience. You're going to say different things on a one-on-one or in a group versus in public. And so basically every single post you make, you can select the audience for that post. What we've said in the data use policy, again, another way we want to just be really clear with users is if you basically, I control my space. So I control my timeline. I control the audience for things on my timeline. You control the audience for things on your timeline. So if I post, let's say you put a status update, I'm here chatting with Erin, and you set that to your friends, and I then comment on it, I say, oh, cool. Basically, your friends are going to see my post. The other point that we make in here, again, to be really clear, is you can change your audience after I post a comment. So let's say you started out as friends. I'm here with Erin, and I posted. It was a lot of fun. And then you change it to public. My posting that I made on your comment, right, on your sort of status update, will go public. So basically the point here, we want to be really clear with our users that you control your own timeline, your own space. Others, you control the audience for that. Others control the audience for their space. So when you comment on a space, you need to understand the audience that's going to be able to see what you say. And again, look at those icons. That really helps you understand. And then you can choose, you know what? Andrew's talking to the public. I don't want to say this. Or I know Andrew's only talking to friends, but Andrew can change that status later. So I'm going to be just smart about what I say, which we hope everyone is in any event.
That's good. And just to remind folks, they can find all of this information we're talking about, all of the proposed updates on our site governance page, the Facebook site governance page. Just go into the search bar, type in Facebook site governance, you'll find the page, you'll click the document, and you can find the red line, you can find plenty of information about
the section-by-section analysis, which I think describes a lot of this and more.
Absolutely. Couple more questions about the updates. Rebecca in New York says, what are the updates that we're making because of timeline? So she's got a very timeline-specific question.
Okay. So I hope, again, timeline, for those of you who haven't used it, but for those of you who have or haven't, something new, for example, in timeline is a cover photo. You don't have to post a cover photo. This is separate and apart from the profile photo, which exists today. It's a new photo, and a lot of people are using it to sort of share something about themselves, landscape or whatever, kids. That photo, we're being very clear, is public information. So that's one of the ways in which we're just letting you know of something that's different in timeline. They're now our cover photos. We are changing this lots of language just to call things timeline.
Right. So we no longer say profile.
We no longer say profile.
Timeline.
Again, we still may. I mean, but we're trying to move again to the concept of a timeline. So it's those kinds of changes in response to timeline, but it's nothing. There's things that hopefully folks who have. They learned about while we were rolling out timeline, and people understand that their cover photos are public if they choose to provide one. So it's those types of changes.
Absolutely. Another question comes in from Samantha in Virginia. She says there are lots of edits around advertising. What are those? What are the updates that we're proposing?
Sure. And this is one area where the Office of the Irish Data Protection Commissioner asked us to provide more clarifications around the data we use for advertising. But again, we've always said in our data use policy that we use the data that you provide to us for advertising. And we hope again that our goal is to serve you with relevant ads. And you can always, if you don't like an ad you see, this is sort of a side note, but you can always just click the X that's in the top right corner of an ad, and then we just would love people's feedback on the ads they're seeing, because our goal is always to make them relevant to you and to not interfere with your experience. But one of the things that the Irish Data Protection Commissioner wanted us to provide more detail on is so just more explanations of the types of data we use. So for example, if you like a page, the fact of that like may be used to serve you an ad. So if you like the Coke page, just an example, we may, or may not, but we may serve you an ad for Coke because we know that you've liked Coke. Another example is status updates. If you write something in your status update, like I just went running, we may use that fact, that term running, to serve you an ad for a running shoe. Again, we believe that we've told people before, the data that people provide and the things that they do on Facebook can be used for advertising. I think that just shines through now in the document, just providing much more detail. A couple other changes around advertising, because I'm not sure exactly what
It was a pretty broad question.
Yeah, the person was interested in. So we've always said in our data use policy that we may serve ads off Facebook. So what does this mean? This means if you could see an ad on Facebook, we may, using that same information that we would use to serve you an ad on Facebook, we may serve you an ad off Facebook. We have nothing to announce yet. We're not doing that. But there was some language in the data use policy that indicated that we might serve one kind of ad, an ad that we call an ad with a social context, meaning it may be an ad that then has Andrew liked it underneath it. But we want folks to know that it may be any kind of ad. It may just be an ad for Coke without Andrew likes Coke. So we're, again, just clarifying here something that we think people understood. And we're saying that both in our data use policy and also in the cookies document, we're providing, again, more information that we may use the information that you provide on Facebook to serve you ads on Facebook and off Facebook. So that's another one of the changes around advertising. I think the third one is we had a statement in there around data that we receive from advertisers. So like other companies, we may receive data about you from others so that we can serve you with ads. So let me give you an example. Let's say you use Zynga, and Zynga wants to serve an ad to its highest scores for Farmville, like top 1,000 highest scores. We wouldn't necessarily know why, but they say, okay, here's the UIDs, which are basically the identification number that is associated with your account, that when you went to use Zynga, we told you gets passed to Zynga. They may pass that back. We already have that piece of information, but we may use it to basically match and say, oh, you want to serve an ad to these 1,000 people? And they'll just give us the ad, and then we'll serve it. So that's a specific narrow context in which we may get data from an advertiser. We talked in our policy about a retention period for that narrow class of data. We never had a broader statement around retention. And this is something that when we were speaking with the Irish, they felt that we should have a broader statement here. And so we've added a broader statement basically saying that we will retain your data for as long as necessary to provide services. And so we will still continue in that, with respect to the retention period that was there for that narrow class, we'll continue to honor that. So we'll keep it for as long as necessary to provide those services. So in that particular context, I think we had talked about 180 days. We'll continue to do that. But there may be other contexts when an advertiser, it doesn't make sense. So like if an advertiser, let's say Zynga had a page, they're starting to do more, and maybe they might have a page, they may upload that list of highest scores, right? 180 days, it wouldn't make sense. I mean, we're going to retain the data there for as long as Zynga has that account open, just like we're going to retain the data in your account for as long as you have it open until you want to delete it. If you want to delete it, we'll get rid of it. If Zynga wants to delete it, we'll get rid of it. Again, as we'll do it for the minimum necessary, really, to basically provide that service. And that's what we're saying. So that's another this is a lot around advertising, and it's probably more than that person wanted to know, but I just wanted to explain the three sort of key changes around advertising.
Right.
And if folks have additional questions, you can write in.
Right, absolutely. And actually, the next question that I queued up was from Brian in DC around data retention, but you already addressed that. So let me see if we've got another one coming
Right,
up.
that was that last piece of it, yeah. So there's a broader statement around data retention that you'll see, which we think is a terrific broad commitment that applies to all data, which is why it's much broader than the one that we had before.
So we have a few questions coming in that are not specifically related to our proposed changes to the data use policy, but I think they're important questions nonetheless. Ray from New Jersey asks, I've heard about being able to download my information from Facebook. How do I do this, and what can I download?
Okay, this is great. That's a great question, because I think that a lot of people don't know, well, I hope that you all know about this tool, but many people I don't think know about this tool. We have a download your information tool. You can access it through the account settings page. When on your page, you go to account settings at the bottom. There's a place where you can basically download the information we have. It's a terrific access tool. So people ask about, how can I know what Facebook, what I've provided to Facebook and what you have. I think activity log, we talked about at the beginning, is a great place to see what you've been doing on Facebook and change the audience or delete things. And if you want to see what we still have after you've deleted and taken those steps, you can go to the download your information tool on the account settings page and access your information.
Right. And we recently announced that we expanded the amount of information that you can download. So now I think it's photos, posts, messages, lists of friends, chat conversations, and a number of other fields that people can download and take with them.
I really think we are leading in the industry on this. I mean, I know people may say, oh, why aren't you giving us access to more? But I mean, think about how much we are giving access to. I think it's a terrific tool.
A lot of
we're
content.
Constantly working to, it's not easy. We're constantly working to improve it.
Right. I've got another question, again, not directly related to data use policy, but I think it's an important one. It comes from Paget, I believe, in Florida. And they ask, what protections do you make available to make sure that Facebook accounts don't get hacked?
Hacked, okay.
It's an important question.
Yes.
We regularly get questions about security, so let's address it here.
And I think if people do find this sort of chat session useful, we'll have to bring our Chief Security Officer, Joe Sullivan, on, because he's amazing.
Absolutely.
But we really do. He has a team. We have a security team that works 24/7 to protect accounts. We also use a variety of technological tools to prevent hacking and to protect accounts. I think something that I'll just highlight a couple. I'm sure,
Please.
Andrew, you know others. I think one that's interesting is social authentication. So if we see something that's weird in the account, we see someone trying to log in from a place where it doesn't look like they should be based on where they just were, we might show you a list of your friends and ask you to identify them.
To identify them in those photos.
In those photos, right? A list of photos of your friends and ask you to identify them. And if that person can't identify those friends in photos, well, then we know that person isn't you. That's one way. I think also login approvals is something else that people can go turn on if they want. So if they're logging in through a device that hasn't been approved by them, they can actually put in their mobile number, and we will contact them using that mobile number.
Right. It sends a code right to your phone.
Right to the phone.
And then you just enter in the code and.
So it's another tool. So there's a variety of tools that we use to protect, and I think a lot of innovative tools that we use to protect against hacking and protect people's accounts. That's key.
Absolutely, and I think there are some important links that people need to be aware of. If you believe that your account has been hacked, then you can go to facebook.com/hacked, and there you can manually address the situation. You can lock down your account if you believe that it's been hacked. Another great page for people to like is our Facebook security page, facebook.com/security. And if you like that page, you're going to get all kinds of great tips and resources and the latest information about how we're helping to keep users' accounts safe and secure.
Okay, so the security page.
And
awesome.
facebook.com/hack.
And then also, obviously, I would be remiss if I didn't mention the privacy page. I think also liking that privacy page, because when you like these pages, we will provide you with updates about issues in that area. And so,
right. And the Facebook privacy page is facebook.com/fbprivacy.
There you go.
And while we're at it, let's give a plug to our safety center at facebook.com/safety and our safety page, where you can like it to get real-time info, and that's facebook.com/FBSafety. So turning back to our questions, I know we don't have a lot more time. I've got a question from Joe in North Carolina.
Okay.
Back to the data use related questions. Why do you have a separate document on cookies, and what's that all about? It's the one that you showed earlier.
Yeah, and I hope that folks read it. I mean, this is this document entitled Cookie Pixels and Local Storage, and the why we have this again is because regulators or policymakers, particularly in Europe, but all over the world, have wanted companies to provide more information around the use of cookies. And so we have a chart that goes through the different categories of uses of cookies: authentication, security, site integrity, advertising, performance, etc. And so I hope folks read this. There's also Q&As at the end of the document. The idea is to really is to just inform people about what these are and what these aren't, so that they're not scary to you. You know, people think that there's something scary. And so this talks in great detail around how we use cookies. And there's a lot of information here. And again, if you have questions, please continue to ask us those questions, and we'll respond to your feedback.
Okay, we actually we have so many questions coming in only a few minutes. So let's do maybe a couple rapid fire questions.
Rapid fire?
Yeah, we have one question. This person is asking, what's the mechanism to report any improper postings regarding yourself?
Report abuse. Yep.
Right. So there are report links all over the website on photographs, on status updates, on pages. You can report pages, and just when you click the report button, you can take an action to report that information. You can classify why you're reporting it. You can report that to us. There's also a great new innovation called social reporting, where if there's bullying content or something inappropriate that you'd like to report to the individual and say, hey, you know what, you posted that on my page, I appreciate it if you didn't, you can actually report that content back to the person or somebody in the community that can help address the situation. Yeah,
and I can't emphasize enough how we're trying through these tools to create the same experience that happens in the real world. I mean, if someone does something, sometimes people say, well, Facebook should just go take that off. But what we're really about is enabling you to communicate with that person to say, I don't like what you've done. And if you don't feel comfortable communicating with that person, because if it's a bullying scenario or something like that, then again, you can communicate with a trusted friend, a parent, a teacher, and you can say, I don't like what this person has done. Help me, essentially. So lots of great tools to report abuse. And if you are feeling in any way unsafe, please use those tools. And we have a user operations team that can also help as well. So.
Excellent. We have a couple of questions actually around policies regarding apps. So do you want to maybe speak in a kind of high level about the policies that do govern what apps on Facebook can and can't do?
So that's a sort of a really
big
good question. Yeah,
right?
And I think just with apps in general, I kind of want to maybe even take a step back. I hope we can just use the time. Every time you use an app, what we do is we put up some sort of information to you, or we provide you with a mechanism whereby you can find information around the data that app will be able to access if you use the app. Okay, so number one is we want to be able to tell you before you make a decision to use an app that here's the data that we pass to this app. Now, once you go use that app, you're essentially engaging with a third party. So you need to really trust the apps with which you engage. Know that they're going to get the data that we indicate to you will be passed, and that they're going to use it in accordance with their privacy policy. Now, in terms of like the policies, the terms, we have terms that we require all apps to follow, and one of which is that they have to offer a privacy policy. This is really important. Again, that's a place, just like our data use policy, which is what we call it, but it's the same notion, where you can find out about the data that they have, and essentially it's the data that will be passed, and how they use it, to whom they disclose it. You really need to look at their privacy policies and be comfortable with their practices before you authorize that app.
And if users come across an app that they feel maybe is pulling too much information or isn't disclosing, there's a way to report.
Again,
the apps as well.
There is a place to report apps, just like you can report other things. Report those apps to us. I mean, that is something that we take very seriously. We respond immediately. We have a team that responds immediately, our platform team. Whenever they hear about an app that they think that users have said is doing something that they don't think is quite right, we go to them, we give them a certain amount of time to respond to us, and we'll take down apps if they don't follow our policies and if they're doing something that's not consistent with what our policies say and what users should expect them to do.
Excellent. We are out of time. I appreciate.
Goes by so quickly. So again, can I just do a plug? If you guys think this is helpful, please comment on this and let us know, because I'm happy to do this often. If there's topics you think should be addressed, where our users have questions about, again, happy to come back here, happy to walk through how certain things work. Again, whatever you think would be, whatever our users would think would be helpful.
I predict this won't be your first and last time in the studio. We appreciate your time here today.
Thanks.
And thanks all of you for joining us today live from the Facebook DC studio. Again, one more plug for the Facebook Policy Hub. You can find that through the terms link at the bottom of every page.
Yep.
You can go to the Facebook site governance page to read the red lines and all of the proposed changes to our data use policy. Thank you all again for watching, and we'll see you next time.
And we look forward to your feedback. Thanks so much.